What's wrong with him, Professor?
It's extraordinary. He must be under the effect of some unknown narcotic which destroys the workings of the mind without interfering with the functions of the body.
Like someone in a trance? Or a zombie?
A zombie?
Hey gang! Sorry, voice is a little rough. I was working over a cold. For our next big eerie espionage-ish film, we have the return of Dr. Mabuse. Now, Dr. Mabuse is a German villain. He was created by Fritz Lang, and while not so well known outside of Germany. In Germany, he rivals the likes of Dr. Fu Manchu, Professor Moriarty, Ernst Blofeld. You know, big ones. He was created by Fritz Lang, who in Germany had done such films as Metropolis, and of course the what is considered the first serial killer film, M, starring Peter Lorre. And he also created Dr. Mabuse in the silent film Dr. Mabuse the Gambler. And then he followed that up during the sound era with The Testament of Dr. Mabuse, which kind of got him in trouble with the new regime that was in power, you know, the Nazis. And so he left before things got too bad, and eventually ended up in America, where he started out in Hollywood making social commentary type films, you know, about the underprivileged, like Fury with Spencer Tracy, before he made his big impact in American cinema with his becoming one of the big purveyors of film noir, with films like Scarlet Street, sorry about that, and The Big Heat, before returning to Germany in the 60s, where one of his last films was returning Dr. Mabuse to cinemas with The Thousand Eyes of Dr. Mabuse, that starred Gert Frobe, who you may remember from such fun films as Chitty Chitty Bang Bang, The Magnificent Men and Their Flying Machines, those jaunty young men or those daring young men and their jaunty jalopies, as well as the I believe third version of And Then There Were None, 10 Little Indians, which was made in the desert and starred Elkie Summer. Before that, he of course became the hero of the Dr. Mabuse films. Now, Frobe had been a German soldier during the Second World War, but people did come forward after the war to tell authorities how, as a soldier, he had helped protect many Jewish people, which then allowed him to continue his acting career, which he had done before the war. What, you a critic? Taz is a critic of my commentary. Anyways, the Return of Dr. Mabuse was the follow-up, and also featured a former Tarzan, Lex Barker, who, after his run in Tarzan films, moved over to Europe. And thanks to his being adept at both Italian and German, allowed him to appear in Ow! Excuse me. Sorry, somebody got a little rambunctious. Anyways, Lex Barker, former Tarzan, who replaced Johnny Weissmuller. And again, as he was a prolific linguist, he traveled to Europe, where he got to appear in the torture chamber of Dr. Sadism with Christopher Lee, as well as Fellini's La Dolce Vita, among other many films. After this film, Frobe couldn't do the next Dr. Mabuse film. He was doing some spy film called Goldfinger. So, with Invisible Dr. Mabuse, they had Lex Barker be the main hero. But Frobe returned for the Terror of Dr. Mabuse, which was a remake of the Testament of Dr. Mabuse. And the final two films featured Peter Van Eyck, who had been the victim of Dr. Mabuse in A Thousand Eyes of Dr. Mabuse. And he took over for Dr. Mabuse versus Scotland Yard. And the final film in the series, The Death Ray of Dr. Mabuse. There were a couple other Dr. Mabuse films made after this, most notably the, let's see, where is it? Vengeance of Dr. Mabuse, made by Jess Franco. And there was one more, The Serpent's Egg, made by that Swedish director. Ingmar Bergman. Anyway, let us get back to the return of Dr. Mabuse, which after the previous film, Thousand Eyes, Dr. Mabuse is dead. And we open with a courier on a train. And, well, things don't go well for him. Now he opens doors. Anyway, after that bit of subtlety, Inspector Lohman, the hero of the story from the first film, is getting ready for a long-delayed fishing trip. And we get to see how middle-aged couples are during these times.
Darling, where's my underwear, Cuddles?
In the brown suitcase. But please stop calling me Cuddles.
Why should I? You've been my little Cuddles ever since our honeymoon.
Yes, but that was 20 years ago. It's beginning to sound silly at my age.
But I feel as though I'm on my honeymoon. Going fishing, hooray, hooray.
Aww, that's kind of cute. But unfortunately, his leave is canceled because of the murder of the courier. The briefcase is also missing, and it is discovered that, or I should say, he is informed that it contained evidence against the Syndicate. Yes, the crime syndicate from Chicago. Apparently, they're coming over to Germany to make some deals with another criminal organization. The only clue is a woman named Mrs. Bizarro, who they were notified by the FBI has come into the country. She had one known associate. So, Loman goes to the prison where he's being kept, and Warden calls down and says he's needed up in the office. But before he goes, the doctor there gives him an injection. Wonder what it will do.
Have you ever seen this woman before?
This woman?
Yes, this woman.
Hey, we didn't hear his answer. Oh well. Not that it matters much, because we all know in a movie like this what's going to happen to the woman. Oh, I didn't expect that. Wow. Okay. I mean business in this movie. Whew. Well, while Loman appears on the scene, we meet two other important characters for this flick.
Thank you.
I know. You're a reporter. What a deception.
Why do you say that?
Well, you've awakened a few hopes, I should say. With those legs. And that's the profession you chose?
I make use of my legs for walking.
Wow. Okay. Sexism is alive and well in 1960s Germany, I guess. Whew. Anyways, the journalist is Maria Sabrin, and the American, as if you couldn't tell, is Joe Como. Joe Como. Yeah. Anyway, we'll get back to them later. Right now, Loman's found an important clue.
What was in her bag?
Oh, nothing special, Chief. Compact, lipstick, Kleenex. And this, a book.
I don't need the Kleenex, but the book may be interesting. Anatomy of the Devil, The Murder Instinct in Humans by Reverend H. Breitenstein.
Taking the book along with him, he heads into the local pub, bar, or what do they call it, Hassenfroth? Anyway, after questioning the barmaid, who can't tell him much, he then orders a beer, and while enjoying the beer, takes a look at the book and sees a very familiar name in it. A little hard to see there, but it was the Mabuse myth down at the bottom. Of course, he goes out to make a telephone call at the phone booth, where Joe Como just happens to be able to read lips, and tells Maria he's a loony. He's talking about a dead man. Is he? Anyway, they then follow him to the church, where he meets the Reverend and the author of the book.
I'm more interested in the myth about Mabuse. Do you think it's possible that Dr. Mabuse is alive?
Every soul is immortal, Inspector, and the name of Mabuse is just a personification of criminality. It seeks for power and is motivated by megalomania.
Pretty interesting discussion. Then someone starts ringing the bell. Nobody should be ringing the bell at that time of night, so the Reverend goes off to check into it. And while Loman is left alone, someone tries to get rid of him. Things don't look good. But Loman's a little smarter than they give him credit for. Whew. Quick thinking. He's only slightly injured from it.
Is only mostly dead.
And of course Maria and Joe Como, who have been following him, they rush in to see what's going on. Turns out Maria and the Reverend know each other. And she asks him if she can see her father, but he says it's not a good time. That'll bear looking into. Right now, we find out who Joe Como is.
Joe Como, FBI.
You gave us the tips on Mrs. Pizarro.
Yes.
It was too late, Como.
Well, your situation isn't brilliant, Inspector. You're caught between the Syndicate and a ghost.
But then they start hearing some weird voices coming from the speaker system. And while everybody's looking around, we discover Joe Como isn't quite who he says he is.
My name is Nick Scapio. I'm the intermediary for the Syndicate of Chicago and partner of the late Mrs. Pizarro.
I know that.
For the police, I'm Joe Como of the FBI.
Seems the Syndicate is ready to make a deal with whoever this mysterious man is, on one condition. They need some proof of the power he says he has. I'll get back to him on that. The next day, the blind witness to Mrs. Pizarro's unfortunate demise is also demised. But it is seen by Loman and Como, and they give chase. And bringing the car to a standstill, they are shocked to see who the killer is.
Don't shoot. I must get him alive. Alberto Sandro. Hey, look out!
Looks like they're in for it. But Sandro hadn't counted on the fact he's dealing with a former Tarzan. How could that be? He must have escaped. So, Loman goes... Sorry. Somebody likes to chew on cords. Loman goes to prison, and Dr. Bomer informs him that he took sick the other night and been given an injection, and he is asleep. Well, let's go see about that.
Boy, that's not...
Well, of course it's not Sandro.
It's Demetrius, the Greek.
10 years for armed robbery.
Another thing. He's been murdered.
Hey, that was the guy that killed the courier and Mrs. Palazzi. Boy, it's rough when you work for a master criminal. You never know when you're going to get taken out. Well, now we have to find the information from Sardo, if they can. And, well, they find he's in some kind of drug-induced trance. And then something else happens.
He must be in contact by radio.
What should I do?
So that's it. A transistor.
Clever. Little transistor earpiece, give you orders. No one's around. Someone needs head scratches. But Sandro, he's going to show him just exactly what the orders were he was given.
I'm everywhere that my will is obeyed. Attention, Sandro. Show them. Go ahead.
He's breaking loose!
Wow! Man, they don't play around. When you're no longer needed, you go. Anyways, the doctor examining him finds that his blood is got a sitting agent in it, a drug that's causing hemophiliacism or whatever, and he remembers there's an article he read about it, and that there are certain drugs that can have that effect.
You determined what the drug was.
He's dead. The autopsy should give us the proof we're looking for. Oh, I remember the name now. The article was by Professor...
Man, they got people everywhere. You don't know who to trust. Paranoia is running rampant here. They go to the morgue to see if the person who will perform the autopsy can determine the drug in his system, but they hit a dead end there.
Sulfuric acid. The autopsy was to give us proof. We prevented it. Who? That's a good question, Doctor.
Sulfuric acid. They think of everything. As for who's behind it, come on. How many clues do you need? It's Mabuse. Or someone saying they're Mabuse. Well, Lowen, he's got a plan, and he calls Dr. Wolf, the warden, to his office to let him in on a little plan he's working out.
Carry out these instructions. A, watch out for Bulmer. B, make a complete inventory of the narcotics in your pharmacy. C, survey the steam laundry, particularly as far as the coming and going of trucks is concerned. Above all, be vigilant. Never go alone to cell block D.
Simple enough. Too bad he was a little late in coming up with that plan. Wow. Talk about a hot foot. Well, looks like Bulmer is now in charge of the prison. And he's informed by his boss that he's to prepare for their demonstration to be given on Friday the 13th. Meanwhile, Loman has gone to the library to look up that article the doctor had told him about and runs into Maria, who just so happens to be looking for the same article. Turns out it was written by her father, who is in the very prison all this crazy stuff's been happening. Well, she tells him she's been unable to see her father. So, Loman gets a court order to see this scientist, and he takes Maria with him. But the reunion doesn't go as she had hoped.
Father.
Who is this person?
Don't you know me?
I don't know anybody.
So sad. Loman starts to question him and gets an odd answer in return.
God gives us nuts, but he doesn't crack them for us.
Wow. No idea. But Loman does some working on the puzzle of the cracking nuts. And then he has Joe Como arrested. Turns out his fingerprints don't match the ones on Como's file. They do match Nick Scarbio's, the criminal. But he gives him an interesting proposition.
I'm sorry, but I must plant someone in the central prison. I need a man who's reliable and who can inform me as to what's going on in cell block D.
Reluctantly, he agrees. Maybe this will get him out of prison sooner because they've already got him arrested for whatever. But bad guys aren't being asleep either for the next day. At least it wasn't a flamethrower. Ready for an even more convoluted plot twist? Catch this.
Wire from the FBI has just been deciphered. Fingerprints deliberately falsify Joe Como, one of our most efficient agents, only pretending to be Nick Scapio, acting under orders from us. That's it, Inspector.
Okay, fine. He is Como. Anyway. Loman gets a telephone message. He's gotten these before, each telling him to back off. It's his last warning. Why don't you go fishing? But he recognizes the piano tune from the bar. So he goes to confront the man who's been calling him.
Stay where you are. You ought to give me a last chance.
Yes, I do. I'm prepared to buy you off.
How much?
Oh, let's say 10 million?
I've already refused bigger offers than that.
$10 million? Oh, no, wait a minute. This is Germany. 10 million marks. Okay, that makes a little more sense. Of course, he's refused, so we get the inevitable when such an impasse is reached.
Now we'll see who can act the fastest.
Okay, we found out who was the fastest, and now we have a direct connection between the bad guys and the church. Oh, the Reverend, he's working at the prison now. How convenient. Anyways, Como manages to make contact with the professor, who he confides in, and the professor gives him an antidote for the injections that they give them in that keeps them under control. Then, when he goes out to help plant the explosives that are going to help with the big event on Friday the 13th, they're attacking a power plant. Como makes his surreptitious move to notify Loman.
The city is in imminent danger. Inform Inspector Loman at once.
That was clever. Fortunately, word gets leaked that the police now know. Obviously, it's Nick Scapio. So they trick him into rescuing Maria.
Joe, help me!
Maria! Maria, what have they done to you?
I thought so. You've given yourself away, Joe Como, alias Nick Scapio, alias Bob Harco. You are a traitor.
Like they're in an inescapable doom trap.
We'll get out of this, darling. We must.
But they haven't thought of the wiliness of Joe Como.
What's this pipe here?
What are you doing?
Maybe a gas pipe. And it may save our lives.
Well, that was a close one. They discover that Maria's father has been taken by Mabuse, who the Reverend has identified, and he asks for Maria's forgiveness before dying, considering Mabuse kind of took him out there. Meanwhile, the attack on the power plant does not go as planned.
Fire a second volley!
They didn't even get what, 10 feet from the prison walls? Pretty good. Well, they're soundly defeated, and so Dr. Mabuse and Balmer, and along with Dr. Sullivan as their prisoner, tries to escape, but it's not as easy as they thought. That looks bad. Well, Mabuse, Balmer, and a couple of henchmen, they get away, leaving the scientist behind to burn in the car, but he's rescued by the arriving Loman and the also arriving Como, along with Maria, who takes charge of her father, while Loman and Como give chase, and we get to see Como, or I should say Lex Barker, show off some more of them Tarzan moves he's known for. With the two henchmen taken care of, now all he has to do is deal with Balmer. Wow, that's been going on. Loman, despite his size, manages to run down the main villain, Dr. Mabuse, and we get the unveiling.
And now, my friend, let's see who you are. Well, what do you know? Just as I thought, Warden Wolf turns out to be Dr. Mabuse.
Clever. Should have figured he'd faked his own death. He is a criminal mastermind. And I'm sure we don't have any more surprises in store for this episode.
Dr. Mabuse.
Yes, alive.
What?
I don't know. I guess. Well, anyways, Mabuse manages to get away from Loman and try to escape on a train engine. Guess he shouldn't have run the train in reverse. Well, with that, the doctor is safe. Maria and Joe Como get into a romantic kiss because they've fallen in love during all this. And case closed. Well, except for one minor thing.
Well, Mabuse is dead, isn't he?
We believed that once before. His body wasn't found, so it could have been burned.
Yep. We got sequels to make. We can't just have him die. And so we end with Loman looking out over the teeming crowds of Berlin, wondering if Mabuse is out there, extending his tentacles. Yeah, I rather like the Mabuse movies. They're like low-rent espionage crime films. They go in well with the other popular thrillers that were very, very prolific in German cinema. What they call the Krimis, or the Crimey. I'm not sure about pronunciation, but basically they were adaptations of Edgar Wallace's crime mystery films or books. And 60s and 70s, those were prolific. Always set in England because that's where the books were written. But Mabuse was sort of in those veins, although a little more sci-fi gadgety than the Krimis were. And you can kind of sense a bit of a post-war paranoia that was expected in Germany at that time. I mean, it was occupied by both allies, like, well, basically the Americans occupied one half, the Russians occupied the other half, so there was a little paranoia going on there. Plus, the guilt over what had happened under the Third Reich. So, a lot of things to work out that they worked out with these Mabuse films. It's kind of disappointing that he never became a big villain in the United States or other countries. Very few other than Germans actually made Mabuse films, and he's an interesting and scary character with his ability to mind control, and has minions everywhere, and he's like a spider at the center of a web, and just everything reaches out before him, and he just draws in. Yeah. And the films are very exciting, action-packed, well cast. I like Gert Frobe. He is a good actor, and you get to see him be a bit different from his more well-known Goldfinger, or the more comedic spins he takes in some of his other films. He's very funny in those too. I mean, in Chitty Chitty Bang Bang, he is hilarious. But this you get to see him be kind of tough, sympathetic, kind, intelligent. Just runs a gamut here, and he has so much personality that you cannot take your eyes off him when he's on screen, and he just keeps your attention. It's great. Lex Barker, not as good an actor, but he's perfectly suited for the more action-oriented scenes, and appreciate it for that. He gets to really shine in the following film, The Invisible Dr. Mabuse, where he gets to be center stage, whereas here he's more of a supporting character to Gert Frobe. And unfortunately, this is one of the failings of the Mabuse films, is he is never on screen long enough. He's always, if you see him at all, and it's usually towards the end, he'll make an appearance before he gets taken out, only to come back. And in some of the later films, you don't see him at all. He's just this presence that permeates everything. And I guess it makes him more mysterious, but I always like to have a villain you can see and deal with physically, which is why I like the earlier ones. Although the later ones do have some great sci-fi stuff going on. And the final one, the Death Ray, that is so influenced by James Bond, right down to having the big shootout at the villain's lair, like Bond always had. Yeah, you can tell the effect that those films were having throughout the course of the Mabuse films. But yeah, this really good. A lot of good action, some low budget but acceptable special effects. I mean, you get 2 car crashes and a third car exploding, and a train explosion. Although that one you don't get to see it, but still, not too shabby. And there's some good humor, a little byplay between some of the characters. That's always enjoyable to lighten the mood, since Mabuse films are tending to be a little heavy on the seriousness of things. With the induced suicides and the murders and all that. So a little levity works. Yeah, really enjoy the Mabuse films. I did not discover them until well into my 20s. I found a bunch of them at a local video store and rented them to see what they were about, and really got into them. I saw this one, Invisible Dr. Mabuse, The Terror Dr. Mabuse, and The Death Ray Dr. Mabuse. At that time, I've since seen the rest, and the other 3 are really good. Well, that's all I have to say about this one. Please hit like, share, and subscribe. And if you want something different, from the usual thrillers, you might give Dr. Mabuse a try. And please stay after credits for my favorite scene.
May I ask for your other hand?
You're a funny guy, Loman. I don't quite understand you.
Why not?
You know everything. And you send me to prison as your agent. Why?
You're the kind of scoundrel I have confidence in. I'll give you a chance.